Hello, and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha.
I'm Chris.
I'm Jarrod.
And I'm Dan.
And this is a series where we talk about sci-fi stories in all their forms. Today's discussion is going to take us to chapter 19 of Acceptance, which is the third book of the Southern Reach series by Jeff Vandermeer. This part of the book, I believe, is called Occult Light. And the short story for today is, I forgot. The Doom of Principal City by the author. I have the author pulled up too. I am definitely prepared for this. Yefim Zozulya. The short story that we're reading next week is called The Comet by W.E.B. Du Bois. And we will go to the end of Acceptance for next week. The book that we're going to be starting after we finish the Southern Reach is Embassy Town by China Mieville. That should take us about 4 to 5 weeks to do, and then we'll start the Children of Time series by Adrian Tchaikovsky. That's the plan as of now. If you're reading along with us or would like to join us for either of these books, consider checking out the Patreon forum. And of course, you're welcome to join us here in this discussion group or on the forum for text discussions. So we start off in this section with the continuation of the conversation between Control and Grace. And like Chris was pointing out when we were talking before we started recording, Vandermeer immediately debunked a lot of our speculations last week. So yeah, what I feel like it's more of the same, a lot of answers without getting more answers. So yeah, what do you guys make of that discussion? We also got to see what the biologist turned into. So that was interesting.
Ghibli monsters, it turns out.
Yeah, big monster.
Big monster.
How did you guys picture this monster? Like, how big was it, you think? I know it's big.
Huge.
And it seemed, but how actually, like, would it fit into the lighthouse, or would it fit, like, I'm trying to picture how big that thing actually was.
Well, we know that she was able to touch it from the first floor, right? And we also know that it was wrapping around the lighthouse.
Okay.
So fairly big, I think.
Yeah.
There was a legitimate danger that she would knock down the lighthouse, right?
That's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's go ahead.
I had sort of pictured it a little like the monster in the bathhouse and Spirited Away. As it sort of get bigger and bigger and kind of became that big amorphous blob, essentially, in a lot of ways, with all the eyes and stuff in it. I sort of had that vision in my head. I probably not correct, but it was kind of like that kind of thing that it could wrap and morph and change shape and do all that. It's kind of like trudging along.
That's what I had. I was like, this seemed like a biomass blob of some sort, and which the biologist kind of makes sense. But
I was picturing it as Godzilla with a lot of ice on the body. A colorful Godzilla. Sorry, Jarrod, you were saying.
Very interesting. And you're right. Like we get into this section, the second page, Control says kind of a wormhole, and then Grace is like, really? Do you think they make spaceships too? Do you think they traverse elemental space, interstellar space and stuff like that? And so all those theories that we had, they're all being questioned at this point by these characters, and she just says it's something, a bit more subtle than that, maybe. So
yeah,
I don't know. It kind of makes sense, doesn't it, though? Because they even say, I don't know. Go ahead.
I was going to say it does and it doesn't. I mean, it's sort of one of those cases that we know everybody's story at this point, and so we sort of have more information than everybody. Like the idea that they travel a wormhole through space and time to another place might make sense. if it wasn't for Saul's story and the origin of it, of where it starts off, because it's very much on planet Earth at that time. It's the west coast of America at that stage. And I think they sort of speculate, and maybe I might have picked it up slightly wrong, because there's obviously a lot of speculation that goes along here in these couple of periods, that they're kind of saying that it's kind of existing in two places at once in some ways, a bit like your quantum theory or otherwise, that and that's why that would be why the stars shift, etc. That you kind of move between both places, if you don't mean, one based in reality, and then or one based on Earth and one based somewhere else, if you know what I mean, with a different physics system or something,
Yeah.
I was sort of thinking that maybe it was like when the actual event happened to create the barrier, maybe that's when it sort of pulled itself apart. Because, well, I was thinking, doesn't someone say, is it a biologist that says that she saw something while walking through the door, right? She saw like the bodies and the ruin.
Yeah.
So it's probably, so I was starting imagining, okay, that's what it is right now on Earth, and where inside Area X, where people go, is somewhere else then. But it could be like, parallel dimension or whatever, right?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, either way, I'm not sure that it actually was explained, as much as I sort of felt it's not what we thought, but I still don't think it felt very definite. It was, again, a lot of speculating as to what it could be.
Yeah.
Sorry, Varsha.
Yeah, but yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was saying the parallel dimension thing somewhat explains the doppelgangers a little bit. No, it's like it's pulling out the corresponding people in the parallel universe. And it was also somewhat hinted at, assuming that the answer is anywhere close to parallel universe. Cheney and I think Whitby also, to a certain extent, talk about parallel universes. It's like they throw every physics theory out there, right? Like every interpretation of quantum mechanics out there. But parallel universe was among the ones that was mentioned so far. So that sort of makes sense too. And the simultaneous existence that you were talking about, Chris, I thought it was really interesting when they were speculating, okay, if we are not in this portion of Earth, what is on Earth? Where
right,
we are.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And is it, they seem to refer to it as an illusion, the fact that the coast and everything, well, at least the skyline, not skyline, the sky, the stars in the sky, they think is an illusion. Is the coast and the lighthouse, etc., also an illusion? Or because I think that the wormhole theory, that wasn't really adding up to that. Like, why would they go to a place exactly like the one that they are in, minus the people? Which, I guess that's another aspect that needs explanation. Sorry, Jarrod, you were saying?
No, I that's the point I was going to make, is that somebody speculated, like, what is here if we're not here? You know what I mean?
That's right.
We went, if we went to an alternate dimension or through a wormhole, whatever it was. So what is on Earth in that place if we're not on Earth in that place? And so what does it look like? Like, is it just, is it ruined? Is it just because the people who were living in Area X originally before the event, they either evacuated or they got, or like Saul got sucked up into it, or somehow something happened to him, and so it's not, doesn't seem to be just a case of an alternate place. There's something intermingled here, and I'm not sure what it is. And
it has to be both, for the reason of the travel time back. Because if it takes you 3 years to get there, for instance, which is sort of what's been speculated between what happened between Control and Ghostbird, and that's why Grace got there in some stage, then if you're ever able to go back, which it seems likely, through the crawler, through the door in the crawler, and then through this other wormhole that they found, it's not taking them 3 years to go back in the same way. So again, that it's questions whether it's a one fixed point in place and time, like for that reason. But again, it also feels very heady physics wise to be thrown into a book that isn't totally fit. There's not been a lot of like heavy physics in any of this, other than very light kind of reference to time difference and all of that kind of stuff. So I can't imagine that that's where it's going either, if you know what I mean, because that's hard to explain, in a couple of pages.
And what concerns me a little bit here is in one of Ghostbird's chapters here, she says, you could know the what of something forever and never discover the why.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, is that going to be our fate?
Maybe.
And I was like, oh man.
Well, all these signals, Vandermeer's like, don't be angry at me. I already won.
I'm sort of thinking the same thing though through it. You know, if it is a wormhole, it's a single place and point in time. So it's like, yeah, what does that actually? What does that mean? Yeah,
I think
really matter.
Saying, like, is it some sort of, I don't know, like aversialization, some tool used that they're not even smart enough to understand what it's supposed to do, right? They say something like that. Yeah. But I think as far as the time, I don't think it's like it takes them 3 years to get there. I think it's like a time dilation sort of thing.
Yes.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe, 3 years in there is equivalent to a month, like 3 months outside. Maybe they didn't notice before from the,
We were speculating that last week. It was actually Steve came up with the idea that the tunnel tower, whatever crawler, was a gravity well in a lot of ways, and that would explain the time dilation, which I thought was very clever. Indeed, he had me totally sold in that idea. I have to say, I thought that was very, very, very good. But I agree with that, with your postulation there, Dan. Look at the time dilation.
Why would the people not feel the extra gravity go over? Still normal people. And if you get that much of a time, actually, it wouldn't be time dilation. It would, if you get that much of a time slowdown, the gravity would have to be very strong.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
But who knows? I mean, it's sci-fi. A lot of stuff could happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Are they in a spaceship that's traveling close to the speed of light then? Because, well, okay, so the section starts with Grace claiming that all of the expedition members are astronauts, but then she shoots Control down immediately after he says wormhole, and shoots down the idea of like, okay, I suppose she shot down interstellar spaceships and stuff, but if they can't feel the gravity, but what do you feel if you're traveling at the speed of light? Does it feel similar to gravity? Isn't that what the general relativity thing is, the principle of equivalence? So you should feel heavier.
If you're accelerating, right? It's fair.
Oh, but if you're at constant velocity, okay, yeah, that's fair.
I think,
I was going to say, I'll just work my next work experience as a photon, right? And then I'm sure I'll give you a shout. Oh, dear.
Oh, man.
A lot of this seems very unlikely, is all I'm saying. Given the content of the book and given that it is broadly accessible, like it still has been in my mind a lot of the time that this is a book for people who wouldn't normally read sci-fi. There is it's a very biological book, if anything, more so than a physics-based book. And a lot of the stuff that we've kind of got into the weeds of feels super heavy physics, and to the point that it's like there's no way it can be this, because the hardest sci-fi really is the only stuff that goes the quantum mechanics. To be perfectly honest,
it could be both. It could be both. Yeah. It could be, you could speculate on these actual what's happening, but still enjoy the book with just trying to figure out the whys and the characters, right?
And if he doesn't actually tell us exactly what it is, which I think is actually most likely in a lot of ways, then it can sort of be anything at that stage.
Yeah.
You can fill in the blanks yourself.
This is interesting. Again, this is Ghostbird's musings, right? I couldn't tell if she was continuing to eavesdrop on their conversation or if she finally joined it. I think she did speak, right? Yeah, she did. Anyway, Ghostbird's musings: membranes and dimensions, limitless amounts of space, continual attempts to transform the human into the non-human. And then she goes on to say, what if an infection was a message, a brightness, a kind of symphony, an odd form of communication? I feel like this paragraph is telling us everything about Area X, but I have no information to figure it out.
Well,
membranes.
it's like the doppelgangers of the emissaries in a lot of ways. They are the seeds of the parasites. So they are the rabbits that the humans are sending from the other side in a lot of ways. You know, it's kind of very much the same idea.
Or it could be some sort of, I don't know, like terraforming device from an alien civilization or something, right?
For sure. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That reminds me, at some point Ghostbird was thinking to herself about exactly the things that we knew happened to the lighthouse keeper. So is that just part of the information you get when you're doppelganger? Like how did she know that stuff?
What specific information was that? Do you remember?
I think it was, she remembered that Gloria was skipping on the stones at the time, that the lighthouse keeper got sick or something.
So more echoes, really, like we've been talking about the echoes of the dialogue that's been appearing in different places, echoes of images.
Between, you mean like the lighthouse keeper photograph that we've seen?
Well, that and also these kind of ideas that people keep on seeing things that seem to be out of place and out of time in the background. You know, again, that kind of, like, I don't want to say the Matrix, but that kind of deja vu feeling of something's happened before or something's been there before, and they're seeing that out of the corner of their mind. Or like, there's also an awareness that's through the book of that they start to know where the biologist is. In terms of like, oh, we've got to be careful. Oh, but I know she's not here; she's somewhere else. And they sort of start to have an awareness of the people that are in there that seem to morph and become sort of more one with the resonance of Area X itself in some way, that they can sort of read it and understand it in ways. Even Grace, even the 3 years she's been there, can certainly seems to have a more pointed knowledge of actually what's happening on a moment-to-moment basis in that world.
It's interesting. I just thought of this, the fact that so they think they're not on Earth, and the biologist, to what you were saying about the connection she has with the biologist, and she knows that she's not here, and she's in oceans far deeper and vaster than the ones here. So she's somewhere else there, or is she back on? Well, it can't be back on Earth because I believe she's measuring by Earth proportions. So where is she then? If they are not on Earth, the biologist is not with them.
I mean, like, we don't know, like, it could be like they could be within an entire new sort of huge world or whatever. Remember other expeditions, like, for example, they tried getting to the border, but they never got there, like even like many days and days. So who knows? Maybe the ocean extends forever down or something. Or maybe it's a metaphorical sort of ocean.
Or it's that fluidity happens and where they are kind of changes depending on the time of day, that kind of stuff, you know, the day cycle. So the biologist can be in the other planet that's the mirror of it, and they could be on Earth or vice versa at any different time. And maybe the change only happens when you're in the other universe as you kind of become accustomed to your climate, you know. Very quick evolution in some ways, because in our case, like, evolution has happened to the human race for, you know, over very long periods of time. We evolved to our surroundings. We kind of have no use for our appendix and stuff like that over the years. You know, we don't have webs between all of the kind of evolutionary stuff that we have found. If you speed that up and put that in time somewhere else, sort of what's happening to the biologist is that she's morphing and changing to her environment that's there, if you know what I mean. So if she was existing in that place and she never came out of it, then that might be what's happening to her and why her kind of thing accelerated.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Another wild speculation that, like, I'm not for about 400 at the moment, so I may as well go for another one.
Because so you're saying that the biologist could have basically just evolved out of being the biologist and evolved into something else, and she's no longer here.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's the idea. Okay. Interesting.
Was it in this section that we encountered this? I don't know if it was speculation or if it was firm knowledge that when the stars change in the sky, when it no longer looks like it, did we get the sense that it ever looks like it does on Earth, or is it that it's different and then it becomes even more different sometimes? But whichever it is, when the stars change, when the night sky shifts, that's when the time dilation gets worse. And at other times, I believe it parallels Earth. Because I did have the question, like what we were talking about last time, what's her name? Grace, Cynthia, the director, when
Gloria Cynthia,
Gloria, why did I call her Grace? Yeah, sorry, Gloria, yes. When she went inside Area X and she came back out, she said that she was in there for 3 weeks, right? But what we were talking about last time, if time moves faster in Area X, then she should have been back in less than 3 weeks. Did she spend longer than...
It goes slower in Area X, right?
So, okay, I guess slower, faster is difficult to understand. So, less time on Earth is more time on Area X. 1 day is 3 years.
But only when you're in Area X, not when you're in Earth, like, if you know what I mean. So,
so was she gone 3 weeks Earth time, which means, well, she can't have been there for several years. But yeah, so if she was only gone for 3 weeks, she should have been gone only for a few minutes here. But I think they kind of explain, or a few seconds even, I think. Yeah.
Maybe
we have to do that math, but
we haven't got the equation. I was going to say,
yeah, but she, but then also it does say that sometimes it stays parallel with Earth, the time. So maybe that's the explanation for the 3 weeks.
I try not to think too much about any of that stuff because I sort of feel I'm going to ruin whatever there is left for me in this book if I get bogged down in the weeds of actually how the science works. Which, I know that Vandermeer has a scientific consultant who's a university lecturer that he uses for quite a lot of this, but I suspect that's only for making that it sort of could make sense without even ever having to explain it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a good point, Chris, because it reads very quickly. And so, yeah, you could sit there and get bogged down in all the possibilities and all the the science and whatever probabilities there are for these scenarios. But then you just want to keep reading because the characters are so interesting and you want to find out the situation that they're going to either get in or out of. And so it's, yeah, I guess we, these 4 stops that Varsha's imposing on us here is actually good for that kind of speculation that we're doing now to try to delve into these weeds.
Yeah, you're welcome, Jarrod.
I think interestingly, like you just said there, Jarrod, I think it's still the most interesting stuff in the book on a chapter basis is the character development.
Yeah.
And actually their interrelations between each other. Things that really jumped to me, if I bring a couple up. The relationship between Ghostbird and Control, the fact that she really goes to comfort him, I thought was such a progression in her as a character. In some ways, that she was the one that stepped up and put that forward, and that she kind of admitted that she cared for him. But also that later on, he was still trying to cozy up there when she's sleeping, and as soon as she's awake, she's pushing her away. So it's not evolving to that stage, if you know what I mean. But there is an evolution in her character as to their relationship as a partnership, whether romantic or otherwise.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because that contrasts so much to who the biologist was and her relationship to her peers around her in the first book, and then because then you get this clone of the biologist who's now learning to live with all these humans.
Right.
If she's not human, or cloned human, whatever she is, but develop this completely new relationship with these people that really has no basis other than the memories of what she might have obtained from the cloning. And
that's right.
It's that's really a lot to think about that you don't really think about that much while you're reading fast paced through this thing. Now and later on, you're like, wait a minute, that's that's pretty deep.
Especially in the terms of this novel, because that very question of what is inherited versus what is learned or developed is kind of the theme of Area of X in its own ways. That's sort of like the bigger existential question we're left with is how much of this is naturally evolved and how much of this is kind of alien involvement or what's different. So it has that sort of symbiotic nature to it in terms of the character development mirrors the world development in a lot of ways.
But, and on top of that, it's what is it about this clone of this biologist that makes her different? Because you had Whitby murdering his clone, or vice versa. I'm not 100% sure.
Allegedly,
and so there's definitely this like it seems to me that the people who are being cloned and the clones themselves don't want to interact with each other, don't want to be, it's almost like holding up this mirror to yourself that you absolutely don't want to see. And so the fact that the ghost bird is coming face to face with the biologist in huge mass bio form here, and dealing with it probably better than the other people around her were dealing with it, and seeing that mirror and not recoiling in terror the way that Whitby did and the way that most likely some of the other people did is part of the fascination for the ghost bird character that I have, and I really love this character. It's a really great character.
I love the opening sentence of this section, which points to exactly what you were talking about, Jarrod. What kind of life was this, where you could read a letter from your own haunted twin, that you could live within the memories of another and think of them as real, a second skin, and yet so utterly false? I love that. It's so brilliant. And it's just 2 sentences to make us think about all the depth that you were talking about earlier about identity and memory. Does the inheritance of memory make you the person that you inherited them from? And it's absolutely brilliant.
And then later on she refers to the biologist's final response as the only response that mattered, and her entire letter was a SOP to expectations, and that was just I love how she pointed that out and compared it to the other journals that were all piled up in the lighthouse, because on some level most came in time to recognize the futility of language. And I thought that was a very interesting point. Like, what does that mean, the futility of language? And how is that going to tie into what Area X is becoming or trying to become, or what does that mean exactly? The futility of language.
Isn't it so interesting? Because we've read Babel 17 quite recently by Samuel Delaney, which kind of takes the opposite slant in technology and basically saying language is biology and it is part of it's a living, existing thing, and actually using knowledge actually gives you power over something else and all the rest of it. It sort of takes a different slant. But it's so again having these kind of scientific ideas kind of presented and just asking you the question and then probably using it in some way in the story and you trying to spot where he's used it, to kind of probe that idea, because he has a lot of these kind of like even in the first couple of sentences are those ideas where he forces you to kind of read it and then that he's sort of playing with it in the background, because those ideas are basically the structure of the story in a lot of ways. What he's going to go ahead and pull through from Ghostbird's characters and interactions with everybody and graces and all that stuff. So like the futility of language seems to me, if I'm going to give an answer, that language isn't biology, if that makes sense. It isn't part of the ecosystem, if you know what I mean, that like Area X has, which can change and affect things. Language is an explainer or a commentary on that rather than actually part of the fabric in some ways. So that would be my
It's also a sort of interesting pivot, if I may call it that, for the series as a whole, isn't it? With all the focus on the language, or at least what we maybe interpreted as the importance of language, or words at least, with the whole crawler writing, the writing on the wall of the crawler and how it influences people. You would think that language is supremely important for this organism somehow, in some sense. And yet now it's sort of, well, maybe language isn't important after all. Like, I'm curious to see like where those two things meet. This focus on the thing that can even drive you insane with looking at the words, and this acknowledgement that language is futile in whatever it is that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Maybe it's sort of, commentary or whatever. It's like it's thinking about certain gaps that language cannot overcome. Like if there's too much different, if you're talking two different languages, you can speak as much as you want, but you're never going to be able to communicate. Or maybe it's like talking about language more as like, instead of something to transmit meaning, but more from a biological perspective of like patterns and replicating patterns, because that's what it seems Area X is doing. Does it understand what it's saying, or is it just taking elements and just replicating them, maybe like a parrot or something, right?
Oh yeah, that's brilliant.
Actually, thinking about that, I'm trying to think about examples through the book. So language is futile or otherwise, right? The words, the control that you use from the psychologist, even the word annihilation, all of that kind of stuff that they tried to use to control the environment and control the people was futile. It wasn't effective. And in that way, they've always been very careful about people not having names and people not having things, as if that would sort of exert some control over them. And again, could be the idea that Area X is saying, you're being very careful about this stuff, but it doesn't matter. Your essence of a person is not tied up in your name or your identity. It's in your makeup and your DNA and all of that kind of stuff that makes you human and about your actions. So actually, a lot of that stuff's like super fascinating, like even from that one line, because it makes your brain spin off into the other things that happen as goes along.
Yeah, another cool line was the words were such a sorrowful disappointment, so inadequate in expression of both the finite and the infinite. Even as the crawler wrote out his terrible message, so that kind of plays all right into that. And I thought that was just a really cool section in the paragraph there of Ghostbird's stuff.
Yeah, there was this other interesting line. It's slightly different topic from what we've been discussing so far, but to the concept of like what they were talking about earlier, that membranes and dimensions, is that like Ghostbird suggesting that the membrane, that the border is a membrane of an organism, but this line, one organism might peer out from another organism but not live there. So that could again mean so many things. It could be about Area X as a whole, about the doppelgangers, about the things that people are turning into, right? Yeah, I thought that's another really well-placed sentence that seemingly tells us a lot, but I don't have a clue yet what it means.
He's a very skilled writer, is Vandermeer. I think that's one of the things that I think could be missed after reading all of these books, in terms of, people talk about the intricacy of kind of what's going on. Like, it's almost like a puzzle box. I think they've said a lot. But actually his use of language and his structuring of his language and they permeate throughout the whole text. And like, it's why you kind of find yourself rereading sections quite a lot, when there's quite, whether they are, even though if you didn't pick it up, you're like, oh, I'll reread that paragraph because there was something in there. I just feel it. I feel it in the bones that there was something to pick apart there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's brilliant, and it's a really good mystery, I think, at its heart. I don't read a lot of mysteries, so I don't know, but the placement of the clues, and I don't know what the answers are, but essentially, I think, at least for me, if I ever pick up a mystery book, which is not very often, it's the fun of trying to figure out what the heck is going on, right? And I think he's given us a lot to work with here, even if our answers are not right, or if we don't get an answer, or if we don't like the answer we get. Dan, you look like you're about to say
I don't
something.
know.
Yeah.
I think if a good mystery book needs to tell you the solution at the end. I don't know if we're gonna get it here, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Vandermeer has hinted quite a few times that we might not get it. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe.
But again, not sure it matters because he sort of plays with this a lot. Like the whole second section of Acceptance is about the biologist's kind of journey to find her husband. The fact that she accepts that it's the owl and that it's done, and then literally the first chapter back, Grace, Control, and Gooseberg sort of debunked that themselves by basically saying, did she just really convince herself that that owl was her husband just by virtue of the fact that she was looking, or she thought it was her destiny to find him in a lot of ways? So again, he's playing with an awful lot of those ideas and saying, like, here's something I've spent an awful lot of time divulging the story, but these are just people's thoughts. Like, they're not mine. They're just that character's thoughts, you know, and you can make sense of them what you will.
Yeah, no, I think that's important for how he's telling the story in this book, is because that's the specific reason why he's labeling these chapters with these characters non-names, because it's their thoughts in that chapter, and you got to keep that in mind when you're reading that chapter, that it's just their thoughts, and so there could be something else going on besides their thoughts, you know, that we need to figure out at a different point.
Yeah. Plus, Ghostbird even says, I don't know if she says or if she thinks, she's like, oh, these two are like making all these plans, or what should we do next? What do we need to do? And she's like, it doesn't matter what you do. That's not the point, right? It's similar. Maybe it's like you said before, like the other part that we discussed. It's just preparing us to the end or whatever it's gonna be.
But maybe it was in this book, because I'm starting to get very confused about. There's so much overlap between the other books that I'm reading and this one. But isn't there a section about how mankind is fascinated with actions being, you know, because this happened, we need to do this, and they sort of that's humanity's kind of driving force, is that right? Okay, we got to do something. We got to do something all the time rather than just existing. Which is sort of,
you need to be in control. Like you need to have some sort of agency, otherwise it's or feel like you have.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, because in Control's chapters, that it's that very driving force right there. We got to do something. We got to, and he's talking to Grace, and he's, you know, but then Dan just pointed out in Ghostbird's chapters, she's kind of just thinking the opposite, and yeah, you're right. So there is that human drive to do something, to figure stuff out, to have some kind of an answer, and I want an answer too. I guess I'm.
These chapters were the only ones we get. I mean, we suspected it, I think, but I don't think it was actually given out quite so clearly that the grandfather has been a big part of this for some time too. Like Jack is a thing. Like Jack was preparing Control for most of life. It was actually confirmed in this, but I think we sort of suspected, you know, through all the kind of interactions that he'd had with Control, that's what he's probably doing. But when they were talking about the mother and then the grandfather, oh, this is all his work. This has his fingerprints all over it in some ways, and you're like, oh, don't give me another layer. Like, for the love of God. Like, I'm having enough problems kind of juggling all this as it is. But again, there's more people in play here than just Laurie or Central or whoever is
Jack
there.
Severance.
What do you think they're trying to do? Like his mother and his grandfather. Like it seems to suggest they're trying to do something, but I don't think we know, do we?
No.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's very suspicious.
Well, we have never been inside their head, you see, and this is the difference between the points of view that we've been given, and we can make kind of reasoned attempts at, because we sort of see their motivations and their thoughts, whereas obviously, you know, the two other Severances, as the case go, we only get them through the eyes of somebody else, and we sort of get this manipulative version of one, i.e. the mother. We get the fatherly kind of person that's supposed to be guiding this young boy without a father, is what we're presented, because that's what Control says. But actually, it seems, and we speculated that it was probably a bit more nefarious than that in some way, and certainly seems to be the case, you know.
And the mother, she seems to have been involved in the SNS brigade, right?
SNSD?
Yeah, SNSB, the surveillance, and oh man, I forgot what Ghostbud called it. No, about what the biologist called it, but
The bandits.
the bandits.
It's the
When they broke in, when Henry, Susan, and the third woman broke in, that was strongly hinted that that was Jackie Severance, right?
It was.
Oh, was it? I didn't get that.
yeah.
Because
I mean,
she,
it's hinted because we're trying to think of what other female character could it be. I think in a lot of ways, rather than it kind of being anything
Yeah,
else. I just made a guess at that point because she seems to be the only logical person.
yeah, exactly. Like that made the most sense, especially because of like her random introduction with Laurie. She has to have reasons or motivations that go way back. And so when a second woman was introduced, it made sense that it's, but also like she's got a gun.
Yeah.
And so she has to be some sort of like military or government professional, maybe. Also, was there significance to the fact that if you go down the coast, there is a military base? I forget who had this conversation, but there was supposedly an oh my god moment between the two characters when they realized that they take the boat down along the coast, not to the side that would take them to the town that Control was in, but to the other side. And there is only a military base there. And that seemed to be some sort of revelation for them.
Well,
Is that
I think it was like suggested that it was Saul's boyfriend, right?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
And I think he says because he's like sort of a bit conspiracy theories with the government stuff. So he was like, "Oh, that explains everything because they're like with the government and they're doing weird things."
Yeah,
right?
I think it's more to explain the presence of Suzanne Henry, you know, and what they're actually doing. That to say, actually, they must be military because the base is just down the way, rather than it being kind of something to do with our bigger story.
But there must be something there. I don't know. I feel.
Yeah. Doesn't that also make a case for the third person being Severance, because Jackie Severance, I mean, and like I don't know, she seems to be some sort of CIA agent. I don't know that they operate with the military in conjunction with, so that would be a strange connection to make. But sorry, Jarrod, you were saying something?
No, I'm not.
Okay, sorry. I just noticed your name is Doomsayer of Principal City. Yeah.
Coming soon.
Coming soon.
Yeah, it leads us nicely onto that scene with Saul, because obviously everything we've discussed for 40 minutes now has been kind of about Ghostbird and Control's chapters. Saul has gotten sicker, but he also walks in this weird S&M thing that's going on between the three of them. And at which point, you know, Henry starts to open up to him in some ways, which I thought was very interesting in a lot of ways, because it now seems like Henry's in the outside rather than being at the center of it, if you know what I mean. And he's kind of trying to lead Saul down a certain path, or kind of help him out by basically revealing that he was the one that damaged the lighthouse. He was the one that did that.
What do you think he's trying to say to him? It's like, it's so confusing. What does he know about this? Because he's not a scientist, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that the Ghostbird says, oh, you know, half of them are idiots because they believe in magic. And so he would be on the idiot side, I guess, right?
He's the seance. Yeah, he's the seance.
Yeah, but he seems to know something or pretend to know something. And was he really in the bar where Saul saw him, or was this just like an illusion and him going crazy?
That was my question. Was he there? Because he was just kind of standing there in the back, and Saul saw him, and then I don't know, he turned away or something like that, and then he wasn't there. And
I think, everything was sort of being blocked, like everything was becoming black, and he was only seeing him until he turned around, and then I don't know.
Speculation time. So Saul's infected, the first infected that we're thinking of. And he's the first person to now exhibit signs like everybody else has been doing for the run down the story of feeling somebody at the corner of their vision and that kind of stuff. And part of the effects of being infected in whatever way seem to be that you can either because they're there, or otherwise you can sense actually things that actually aren't within your perception, and if you know what I mean, in reality. And so maybe Henry was there, but he probably couldn't see him because nobody else was interacting with Henry. Nobody else noticed him, isn't that? I think that was very much a sentence within it. It was like nobody else seemed to be aware that he was there, but Henry was there. And whether Henry's the first doppelganger or whether he was actually standing outside or something like that, rather than just waiting to come in.
Yeah. I think if he's the doppelganger, then there is a mild explanation for when Saul has that moment where he's like, how the heck did you come down so quickly from the top of the lighthouse? But anyway, that's interesting.
I thought that was just him losing time or
it
losing
could
part
be
of
that
his
too,
memory.
We don't know yet.
He has big gaps.
He's his the crawler words or language is leaking into his lighthouse keeper reports, which is very interesting because is he aware that this is happening? Is he writing it almost ironically, like to take away power from the words that have been haunting him? Or is he like not even in control and he's just slipping into this mode?
By the way, was it this? I'm trying to remember which section. I don't think it was this section, but maybe when Saul has like a dream or a vision of like something like a comet like falling from the sky and coming down.
I think it was this section.
It was this section.
Yeah, there was a comparison to a comet, which I thought was interesting. Like that's such a powerful, bright thing that he's comparing whatever he's feeling with. So I distinctly remember reading that in the last couple of days. So
sort of destroying everything, and then he sort of kind of like wakes up and everything is fine. So I wonder if it like maybe that's the impact. Like I don't know, like maybe he was like a beacon calling something from the sky when it arrived, and it was, I don't know, maybe a different dimension, or it was like a metaphorical thing that other people can't see, but he could see it because he's infected. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think that he's calling it down, that the infection that he's had is somehow responsible for it? That Saul is the center of it all? Or just the cracking of the lens is what did the...
I think there was something trapped in the lens, and then he got it, like he got free and he got it, and maybe now he became either that thing is sprouting or it was like a beacon for something. I think
it's the thing,
and how it got in the lens, I don't know. Maybe it was made of light, maybe it just I don't know.
Henry explicitly says that he's released whatever was inside, right? He said that.
How would they know though? How would they know if there's something? How would they measure it or see? I don't know.
That's the thing. And why wouldn't it go into Henry? If Henry was there and he let it out, why not? Why did it not go into Henry? Why would it have to be out in the grass outside for or the reeds?
I mean, even if it's like an alien device or something like that, how would they know to look for something like that? Right? How would very suspicious.
Yeah. I mean, he says because there was this one spot where none of my equipment registered anything. But were they measuring things before that? Like maybe there are similar things on the rest of the planet that they've been measuring, and then they've done similar crap before.
Yeah, because it seems like we knew that there was something going on with the lighthouse, the lens, right?
Yeah.
Because we can't just be going randomly measuring every random thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They were there for a reason. They were there for a purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. Or it could be just a coincidence. I don't know. It could be just like, this is what the book is telling us. There's no, these are just coincidences. There's no actual deeper meaning to things. And it's just people reading deeper meaning into things where it's just nature and causality or accident.
Or if he was reading awareness, and he's walking around and he's a sense guy, and he can walk around and sense things, maybe he gets to the lens and goes, there's a hole in my perception of vision, like there's something not right here, and then he's like, right, I'm gonna shatter this to see if something's trapped inside or what's the way. There's something about this that's different.
Well, how would he be able to know? Like, he doesn't have magic powers, or does he?
He might do. Yeah, he might have VSP.
I guess.
Who doesn't?
I don't.
I somehow know when it's 12 o'clock my time on a Friday night to come and do a podcast. It just happens.
So called biology.
No mundane equipment like clocks for Chris. He knows.
It's like a little alarm goes off in my head. Varsha's shouting at you, in the future. It's the near future.
It is a thing. It is a thing. People can tell time.
That's true.
Yeah.
But
Chris has quite the unique circadian rhythm going on here.
I wouldn't say it's magic, but
Oh.
Yeah. Other bit of like the psychologists, Gloria, Cynthia's chapters were sort of like nothing happened apart from one main thing. And again, I think it was heavily suggested, which is Whitby washing the damn mouse, right? And then the interaction with the plant and the
plant,
the phone.
We
got
got
the plant's not a plant.
and Saul also dreams of a plant, right? Why?
Yes.
Why? What's the significance of? Where did we find this plant? We don't know where we found it, right?
No.
No, we don't.
But it's the plant's not a plant, the phone's not a phone, and the mouse isn't a mouse.
Yeah. It's just things which look like, right, just like the biologists look at the cells. It's look like they're normal, like or something, but they're actually not.
It's heavily hinted that the other Whitby is the mouse. The one that was killed is the mouse.
You think so?
Oh,
I think it's heavily hinted because it talks about it being like almost familial, the care that he has for the mouse. He doesn't use the word familiar, but it's definitely that type of language in some ways that he's caring for this mouse and that he keeps it in, not at home, but
he said he found it in the attic, right? We know which attic.
Yeah, we know which attic. It was in Southern Reach. He had it. So again, if you read that at another time, you'd have thought it was his attic in his house, but obviously we know. So it does ask the question that all three things are not what they appear to be in some way, which kind of then makes you think that there must be life forms of some sort, given that, or they have some life force, but they also can't be destroyed. Like the plant can't be destroyed, can't be burned, nothing can be done to it, which is really interesting. Did it have a flower once?
Yep.
Or was it a flower just in Whitby mind? Yeah.
Can you really believe him?
Oh, that's true.
Unreliable narrator. Yeah.
Is the flower another door into Area X then? Is that how the mouse showed up?
Or did he have it before? I tried to remember.
The flower turned into the mouse.
I don't know about that. Maybe.
No, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I didn't think of that at all, Chris. I think that makes a lot of sense that that's Whitby and explains his later behavior too. If he's sort of in sync with his doppelganger's form somehow.
Did he still have a mouse in Control's timeline? I guess in period.
It was dead.
The mouse was with the plant.
The mouse was dead.
Remember?
Yeah.
Then I forgot about that plant.
What was the status of decomposition? Do you guys remember? Like, did it seem very well preserved or something like that? I couldn't.
The mouse, I think, was like mummified or something. It was like, but yeah.
Okay.
It was gone, sort of. But I think. Like the plant had been eating it, right?
Yeah, like the plant. I was going to say it was a very Dracula sense, wasn't it? That it was kind of within its presence. It was stealing the life force, or otherwise.
Oh boy! Now, see, it's starting to get spring out here, and I'm starting to see all these bugs outside the windows and stuff like that. So I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to get incursions.
The biologist, when she collected samples from some of the plants, she found human tissue, right? Maybe, Jarrod, you could do that. Collect some samples from the bugs around you. Maybe they'll turn out to be human.
Am I going to feel bad when I start squishing these things?
Yeah, but I think very interesting questions. And again, it's one of those things you look at with 70, 80 pages left in the book, kind of going, it feels like there should be 400 left.
Yeah.
In some ways. So just don't know what to make of it. But you do get that. You do get I loved actually Whitby's answer to the psychologist, the director, about actually don't be looking at me weird. Look at all the shit you're doing, and the stuff that we thought she had a plan for before was now realized was just her losing her marbles in much the same way as Whitby was doing. Their degradation from coming back from forgot bit. So when they sent the biologist husband team in, they actually planted a zombified, like a thing in the expedition to poison in the Area X, and then they all came back as zombies.
They planted someone that had already been to the
Not that they'd been, they planted, they psychologically manipulated somebody to be different, almost like planting almost like planting a thorn into the people that were going in there. And of course, they just reflect that back out. So when the people came out, they basically were the zombie kind of things that they were trying to do in the Area X. I thought that was so interesting. I forgot to actually write it down. I thought, I'll definitely remember that. But of course, there's a million things that happen in this book in the next page that you're like, oh no, but that's the most important thing. No, but when they were setting that up, they actually implanted something in either all members of the team or in one of them to kind of do something or affect things in certain ways. And when we were talking about, why do they keep on sending expositions and throwing people at it? They were sort of just playing with things all the time, saying, well, what if we do this? What if we do this? What if we do this? But the fact that when they came back out, this was a very straight correlation that they basically came out and what they get back out of it was thing. Now, so you could sort of postulate that maybe they try to put a cancer with the people in with them so that it would spread throughout the ecosystem there. But actually what happened was they came back out and the cancer was there. So
they died of cancer.
Yeah, they died of cancer. So it was in the doppelgangers. But again, that would kind of lead into the idea that when the doppelgangers created it, it's a mirror of some aspects of the person that isn't their name. It's their makeup or otherwise, Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place.
No, that makes sense. And can you remind me where we know that they had something implanted? Was it when Laurie and director were talking to?
It was around that place. Yes, I'll actually find it if you talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah. So the other thing that was interesting in the director Whitby exchange was when she asks him what the name of the mouse is. And he says he doesn't have a name.
Yeah.
And it apparently bothers her more than the washing of the mouse.
Yeah. Well, it's very specific to the expeditions that they send, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like the mouse isn't an expedition, so why aren't you naming it? Why aren't you giving your pet a name? But yet, the mouse does have something to do with Area X in some level. So
probably
why would he give it a name? It's it's another one of those interesting existential things, I guess.
Yeah. By the way, I have to leave right now, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, looking forward to our next discussion when we can read the end of it and discuss everything. I guess there's another one coming out, but still.
Yes.
But you know nothing about that, Dan. That's the fun part.
I barely remember what the next part of a book is like, so
really?
no worries.
Okay.
Yeah, to be honest. Cool. Okay.
Thank
you. Bye.
Right. So I have found it.
Excellent.
So it's around the bit where Laurie and the director are having the conversation about her stop being an effing card, and get it done kind of thing. So it said they implant into the brain of the psychologist, and I'm assuming this is the psychologist of the husband's expedition, on what will turn out to be the last 11th, what Laurie calls a pearl of surveillance and recall. Some tiny subset of the silver egg that is central, passing first through Laurie's deforming grip. They make a man not himself, and you go along with it to keep your job, to stay close to what is important to you. And 12 months later, the last 11th expedition comes back, acting almost like zombies, memories cloudier than the drunk veterans at the Starlane's Lounge. So they're trying to make the people not themselves, and that's exactly what they get back in terms of this. So the manipulation through the psychology or otherwise has backfired on them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that it was a psychologist with the implant. The psychologist was the one that turned into that reed monster too, right? So that was a very unsuccessful transformation for Area
Indeed.
X. Maybe the implant did that too. Yeah, that's really clever. I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah.
But funny enough, the reed monster is sort of watching, isn't it? Something that that they notice actually when they go back, that the biologists notice that the reeds or something about the reeds is disturbing them. But yeah.
Yeah. And you just said 12 months later that expedition came back. How long were they actually gone in Earth time?
Well, it's 12 months in Earth time.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah.
Because that's what they're looking at viewing from.
That's right. It's 12 months Earth time. So
that might only been a couple of days.
Long. Yeah, but I thought it was the other way around.
But that's the thing. We don't know whether the time dilation happens. Yeah. Whether it's a wormhole causing it or because of the travel distance or what's happening.
We're getting a little turned around. Yeah.
And it's also not the same people who went in, right? We assume these are doppelgangers who came out, which could have been spit out by Area X at any point in Area X time. Doesn't have to be when the expedition came in. Just created a copy and then, like, I don't know, just messing with people on the other side by spitting them out 12 months later. This seems like an appropriate amount of time for them to have spent inside.
Well, forced evolution doesn't have an agenda, right?
Yeah.
And so this section we read ends with, they descended into the tower.
Yes.
Dun, dun.
Yeah, you guys were talking about the characters earlier. I thought it was really sweet and interesting that Control decided that the person who keeps watch and should have the chance to return should be the one who has something to return to. I believe Grace has children, right? Or at least a daughter or something. And Grace doesn't refuse. So just, I love what that tells us about both the characters. It's absolutely brilliant, just that little exchange.
And back to that point of, like, the best parts of this book are those bits, are those subtle character moments where you kind of, you see it, you know that it means something, you sort of understand what it means, but it also, to the character himself, like Control, he expects to be rebuffed, but actually the acceptance, and he tells us in his head that he expects to be rebuffed, this week cause over a consternation, but that it is accepted, and we sort of understand it and have some understanding of actually what happened in that exchange, which is fascinating,
Yeah, obviously. It's almost like you don't. I feel like, at least for me, they take me by surprise because I'm so involved in the mystery and, like, trying to figure out what's going on, that when these little moments happen, it's like, okay, I need to take a pause and appreciate what just happened here, right? Yeah. It is, yeah. I think I love everything about these books. I feel like I don't really care how it might end at this point. I got quite a bit of enjoyment out of it already. But yeah, I'd like to see what the final say is on this subject.
It feels like a book about the journey rather than the destination. And the journey has been a phenomenal amount of fun. I expect, regardless of what happens next week, it would have to, in fact, probably the worst thing that they could do would be to try to cram in an explanation that ticks every box, because the fun has been in, there are lots of possible explanations for it, because we only have shreds of evidence for everything along the way. Nobody really understands. And the fact that we might, after 32 expeditions, have worked it out ourselves, or otherwise seems a bit probably not.
Yeah.
What are we hoping for? That's a good question. What do we think the purpose is? Yeah.
I do want some bit more explanation on Lowry, though.
Okay.
That's coming in Absolution.
I think that's definitely coming in Absolution. I think the whole Lowry thing, because it's doing the first expedition in the next book.
That makes sense. All right. And so I can accept the fact I might not get that. But I think you're right on, Chris, that this was definitely about the journey, and it was a very enjoyable journey. And so no matter what the outcome here in these next 70 pages, it was worth it. Like even if we were to stop before that, I think everything else is just icing on the cake, and
I agree.
where we had a good ride.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There are some things that I would like answers to, though. Like, what the heck is up with Jackie and Jack's severance? What was their involvement in all of this? And why did she think that control would be protected from whatever it is she's trying to do the protection from if he was closer to Area X?
Good
and that's one. And then I guess I'd like to know about the involvement of language. Like, I feel like, yeah, what we were talking about earlier, the futility of language as opposed to how the crawler's words are affecting everybody. I think I would like some sort of explanation for what it is about Area X that does that, why those words are so terrifying to everyone. But that one is like slightly less important. I think mainly I'm curious about Jack and Jackie severance. And what the heck did Henry do? Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, that might be in. We might learn more about them in Absolution as well, because that's also
it's the same time frame. Yeah.
Same time frame. Yeah.
I think this is fascinating, right? Because you both given your answers, and I broadly agree with everything you're saying about the questions. But can you think of another book where you were not your premise when you're getting the last 70 pages of a book is not about what happens to the characters? What is the outcome for the characters? Nobody's talking about whether Ghostberg or Control or Grace gets home.
Yeah.
From Area X, whether they can live and survive. I cannot think of another book. Like, think of all the other great books that we're reading. It's all about knowledge, isn't it? It's all about what is happening or what could be explained in this or anything like that. And as much as I love the characters in this, I sort of feel like their fate is already set in some ways. And whether they stay in Area X or otherwise, it's for them about accepting where they are. In some ways, and accepting the hand of life that has been dealt them. So I suspect that'll form a lot of our conversation next week as we go to wrap this up. But I think that'll be interesting.
And like as we said earlier, there have been hints all along the way in this book that's what Vandermeer is setting us up for.
Yeah,
and so it wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it's the readers must accept these final answers. Yeah. No, I really like that. And I think I am not one of those readers for whom endings make or break books. But so this could go anywhere and I wouldn't care because I loved reading my way through this so much. But like you said, Chris, I think a subset of explanations or none at all, if all we're doing next week is continuing to speculate as we have been so far, I think I'd still be pretty pleased with this book.
Yeah. Interesting. Can't
Cool.
wait. I literally can't wait.
All right.
Yeah. Now we're ready to doomsay the doom of Principal City.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yefim Zozulya. What do you guys think? What did you think?
We're all like, who's going to go first? All right. I'll
Yeah, you go, Jarrod. Thank you very much.
I had a blast with this story. I did. I thought it was fun. I was like, right off the bat, right in the first like little tiny chapter. It's like 1-page chapters he has. They're like, it's like they're here. There's just all this hoopla about the army's coming and doom and disgrace and music playing all night long. And you're like, what? And then so there's just running for your life and they're throwing flowers at them. And it's like, all right, this is really surreal and wild. And all I could think about as I was going through it was like, this is like a huge Monty Python script. And this guy's having a ton of fun telling this story. And he's playing with a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like ideology, political ideology, and stuff like that. He's playing with that. He's playing all sides, and it seemed like he was having a blast with it. This was longer than the other stories we've been reading, because I actually didn't start it till this afternoon, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be another 5-page story. I'll just get through real quick. Oh, wait a minute. But it read very quickly.
It did.
And even though it was like 20 or 30 pages, whatever it was, it read just as fast as some of the other ones that were shorter that we read. And because it was actually, I had a good time with it. I don't know if anybody else did, but it was fun.
I loved this story. I had to put the book down and have myself a good laugh when when they have all these rumors about these machines that some organization is setting up on the outskirts of the town, and it turns out it's so they're these loudspeakers so they can laugh at the people of Principal City. That was hilarious.
I know. It was funny.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, no, keep going. I mean, I agree with you. When I first read because it's broken into those small chapters, right? About the first 4 chapters are very farce, right? It is very much that kind of idea. Oh, something's happened. We're going to make a proclamation. Yes, we'll make a committee before we make the proclamation, because this will make it better. They make the committee, then they make the proclamation, and then realize that it didn't go well. So a lot of that is very farcical, and I think the whole story plays with the idea of farce until you realize it's not funny. At the end, it's very obvious the shape of the story from about chapter 5, exactly what's going to happen. And then it becomes, this is why I didn't want to go first, it becomes like one of the most political stories that I think we've had so far in a lot of ways, because when you oppress and create positions of oppression for people, there's only ever one outcome that comes from that situation. Like it's just what, and that was exactly what the story was coming. So when the events at the end of the story happened, it was the only thing that could happen. If you take away people's liberty, you take away the sunshine, as it was, you take away their hope, you make them live under lights, and then you appoint a minister for hope. You can do what you can politically, but if there actually isn't any hope, then they'll burn the place down, as it turns out.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter where that tyranny comes from.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter where that totalitarianism comes from. Like even one of the lines in here was, "Let reason, the only ruler of the earth, help you. Submit to its rightful authority." And I was like, that statement right there, just dripping with irony, you know, because you would think enlightenment and reason would be something that people would celebrate all around, but even that can be stifling in its own way if put to the wrong use. And that's, basically the lesson of this whole story, is that very real and so sober lesson throughout all the hilarity that's actually going on with the proclamations and the committees and stuff.
Yeah. I really like that. I think I was trying to connect to any specific kind of oppression or any specific type of political message. I think you could take what you said, Jarrod, pretty much anything that in which one group of people has complete and total authority over another, and who are building their well-being on the foundations of the oppression of these others. I think, I don't know that I agree that this is the only outcome. Like the overthrow, yes. The violence, maybe not so much. But yeah, ultimately people will rise up and do something about it, or they should, perhaps. But also, I think it also did a fantastic job, in my opinion, of paralleling, I guess, some of the hypocrisy we see in the oppressor group, right? The things that they took away from the lower city, saying, I forget the specifics of what they said, but I believe they call them greedy and whatnot. But they did the exact same things that they were trying to prevent, or they wanted the exact same resources that they said, you can't have it for these reasons. So does that not apply to you? So the sort of inherent hypocrisy in said oppression. I thought it also did a fantastic job of demonstrating. And yeah, I think, I was laughing throughout, but also it in an ironic or like sort of wanting to bang my head against the wall sort of way, right? Like that's what's funny about it, that it's funny because it's true. It's in that category. So yeah, overall, I did think I loved how funny the story was, but I loved the story like for what it was saying too, or how it was saying what it was saying.
Yeah, I love the story as well. I probably didn't make that clear. I very much did love it, but a lot of the commentary that's done as farce actually has a very serious edge to it. The whole way, like the loudspeakers of the blasting thing out, that you can sort of drown out discontent with entertainment or with laughter or something, that we see through the media or we seen in ancient Roman times through the gladiatorial battles. That was kind of the same idea, is that entertainment could drown out, poverty and all of the things that were happening. You see that happen again and again, and that actually the people who were in charge in the lower city, the dark city, in Principal City, the very top, like the Minister for Hope, they were fine. They were okay. There were aspects of the Principal City that weren't affected by the lack of sunlight and high prices and etc. there, but for the core people that were left, their life was devoid of progression, because again, they designed a political system that you couldn't go up to the upper city. Like that was part of the rules in the political system that they thought would protect them from it, but actually in a lot of ways doomed the upper city civilization. And the main story is that in order for people to live and coexist together, there needs to be some sort of
harmony.
Harmony and symbiosis of the two cultures, because essentially, like, I thought the very start of the book was very much about just stealing artifacts and stuff like the British Empire used to do for many years. They basically said, we love your culture. We're basically going to take all of those. We don't actually care about the people. We're just, we love the paintings and the art and stuff. Well, that's what we really want. We love your culture, as if it's some sort of toy rather than a thing. And that imperialism kind of idea that was running through that. And I was really surprised to see that the author wasn't actually, that probably was not what he was talking about, given his heritage himself, and I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, it's cool because he had those aspects of imperialism in there, but he also had other political ideologies in there. He had communism. He had a little hints of capitalism, and he had all the stuff was in there, and it was just, I thought it was brilliant the way he did it. And I love the names, the Efficient Philosophy Association.
The EPA.
Yeah. That's the one that laughs at you, right?
Yes.
And the guy who was the head of that, he's yelling at the people who were rioting, and he's like telling them, fools, you can never win. The backbone of the world is reasonable violence, not a wild, self-confident riot. Blind, rebellious worms, despicable, optimistic calves. What are you hoping for? But that's the ultimate question right there, is what are you hoping for in all cases for all the parties involved? And it seemed like the full irony of the whole story is that none of these people involved were hoping for any kind of harmonic outcome. Like we were saying before, they were all blinded to the possibilities of somebody working together instead of just one party or another being the authoritarian rule. And I loved it. I thought it was great.
And it's also interesting how it sort of sets up expectations that it then breaks down, because it starts with, oh, these people are expecting bombs to fall from the sky, but no, they're throwing flowers. They're such kind and gentle. They're bending so gracefully. And these guys seem like the unreasonable ones. How dare they throw flowers at us and like shove this in our face? But then the situation builds over time, and you see it flip, which again, I think speaks to the real world, in the sense that sometimes the gentle authoritarian ruler who seems nice in the beginning might flip and turn into something horrible, who's been oppressing you without your knowledge or without your consent. And
It really made me think of the Monty Python and Life of Brian sketch. What have the Romans ever done for us, right? In a lot of ways, because you can list all the positive things that Roman rule did for Western Europe in a lot of ways. And in this case, it was obviously that they cured disease and that kind of stuff by making sure everybody was inoculated and all that kind of stuff. And in some ways, in an authoritarian rule, they can say, see, we've done loads for the culture here in a lot of ways. But ultimately, the Roman Empire was overthrown for reasons as well. While all the progression that it led to in terms of, infrastructure and all that other stuff, they oppressed people within those countries and killed their culture in a lot of ways and killed their sense of freedom within it. And then that's why all tyranny comes to an end at some stage, is because it only lasts for so long, and so that cycle goes on. But you could see it happening, because you're right at the start of it. First, you were very much, what are they complaining about? There's nothing to complain about here. This is the most minor thing. There, even the oppressors were kind of like, we're not doing anything. We're going to leave your cities the way they are. You're just going to have less sunlight, but we're going to put in electricity. What's your problem? And all that kind of stuff. And so I sort of was like, I thought the thing was going to be how farcical, subjugation is, in a lot of ways, because people will just, because they don't like change. I thought that's kind of where the story was going for the first couple of chapters, and then it obviously became very clear that it was sort of very subtly, in like a Paul Verhoeven film, like he does in a lot of ways, plays with the idea that have things being funny or farcical, but actually, if you look at them in reality, you can kind of see what's going to happen at the far end. You can actually see the humanity of it underneath, and then still tell a funny, interesting, farcical tale within that, but then come to a conclusion and go, dear. Started with the flowers.
Yeah.
I also thought it did. I mean, I loved the way this is an excellent satire, because it made so many points. Like the one about where the president of Principal City has to go negotiate for Sky Space to put up his message. So I don't know if this is what he intended when he wrote the story, but a lot of politicians are beholden to companies to get their job done. Like you have to serve these guys to get what you need to do, and I think that's true across many countries. So that point about like them trying to negotiate for airspace, and then there was something else for which they had to negotiate, which like I don't remember, but I think that was brilliant.
Adverts out of the sky. They didn't want adverts in the sky. Again, that capitalist kind of criticism. Yeah,
that's right. And who got the contract?
and the first thing that they do after dropping flowers is start advertising things from their manufacturers, which is like hilarious, but also in the sad but true category. So,
very much so. And of course, this story ends with a bunch of people jumping around like mad. They're all insane, joyously and loudly singing songs of honor of the rising indifferent sun. And it just ends with this. Everything's destroyed. It's very similar to a lot of the other stories we've been reading, where the world is destroyed, or the whatever, or this this town's destroyed by a bunch of robot rabbits or something like that. But it follows that pattern of all this early sci-fi that we've been reading so far, in that there's this big destructive ending, or this big ending that changes everything. And it's kind of funny, because I'm wondering at what point are we going to get into, because we're going along a timeline here with these stories, right? At what point are we going to get into a something diverting from this style of story ending? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't notice even the first one about the star, which I guess is about a comet, and Sultana's Dream, not quite destructive, but most of them have been in that category.
Yeah.
The New Overworld is in a class of its own, but
yeah.
Well, this is like the New Overworld a little bit, right? Except that was about how they could do it harmoniously, and this one is categorically not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
definitely similar themes. I agree with you. And through a lot of these stories, in terms of like the kind of the changing nature of society, that I'm sure was very prevalent of being concerns around the turn of the century, as it was then,
Sure.
going from Victorian industrial age into well, as they did not know, was the World War age in some ways, which led to the rapid advancements of technology, etc. So but so interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Oh, that's interesting. I think this one was a 1905 story or thereabouts. So we are heading into the First World War time period. So be curious to see what those stories look like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it said he didn't start writing until 19 teens in his little bio there.
The 19th.
Did I miss that?
Yeah, I couldn't figure
Yeah,
out from the bio.
he didn't.
Yeah,
He didn't
sorry.
start writing until 1914.
All
Oh,
right.
okay. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, this was first published in 1918.
Okay.
So right
Very
at the
cool.
start of the
At
First
the end
World
of
War.
Okay. Yeah.
end of the First
Or
World
end
War.
of the First World War. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm.
It was
Okay. Yeah, I misremembered that.
And that's when the Russian Revolution happened and all
Yes,
that.
indeed.
So he was echoing that burning down of the new whatever.
I mean, it's when you put it in that context, this makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways, because people were coming in, and let's say the Russian Revolution was just about having that kind of subjugation of people to say, look, this is better for you. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is, in a lot of ways, and so interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
Very
Good
cool.
story overall. Any
Excellent
other
story.
closing thoughts?
Next week's story's got a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it really does. But yeah, we've got The Comet coming up by W.E.B. Du Bois. We have The End of Acceptance coming up, and then Embassy Town afterwards. If you're following along with us, consider checking out the Page Chewing Forum, where we plan all these discussions. And of course, you're welcome to join us here in the discussion group or chat with us on the forum. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in a week. Bye.